Today, New Zealand home prices take a dive in June. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, where latest posts covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian and New Zealand perspective. Well, the REINZ released their latest report to June 2022, and they were at pains to talk about the annual price movements in properties, not the monthly changes, which, by the way, was down 1.9% overall if you look at their HPI. And according to their HPI, you can see why they would do this. There is the remnants of a run-up which marks the falls following the Reserve Bank of New Zealand's rate hikes, which started in October last year. Falls are in play almost universally, including the Upper North Island, the Lower North Island and the South Island. But there are some variations. The largest one-month falls were in Wellington City, down 5.7%, Dunedin City, down 3.6%, Nelson, down 2.9%, and Queenstown, down 2.4%. And in the north, Turanga City fell 4.3%, Hastings fell 3.9%, Palmerston North was 3.3% down, and Auckland City was down 2.8%. On the other hand, Rotorua was up 2.3%, Upper Hutt was up 1.6%, and Christchurch City was up 0.6%, while the same is also true of Auckland's North Shore City. They did concede listings were up, days on market were increasing, and the proportion of sales via auctions were falling. And they refer to their median price calculations, where the median change was up 1.2% across the country, or 1.5% seasonally adjusted. But the spin machine was in full misdirection mode in their report, saying that the New Zealand median price increased 4.2% annually in June, from $816,000 in June 2021 to $850,000 in June 2022. However, dampened demand sees sales activity down and days to sell are up, according to their latest data. The median residential property price for New Zealand, excluding Auckland, increased 9% annually, from $680,000 in June 21 to $741,000 in June 2022. And there was a month-on-month increase of 1.1% from $733,000. And they said following negative annual movements in May, the median price in Auckland increased 0.5% compared to June last year, from $1.15 million to $1.156 million in June 2022. And Auckland also recorded a month-on-month increase of 2.8%, up from $1.125 million in May. Though Auckland City and Waikato City recorded negative annual median price movements, the smaller territorial authorities of Rodney and Franklin had double-digit increases in median prices. Canterbury was the region with the strongest annual percentage growth in June. The median price in the region increased 21.1% annually, from $565,000 to $690,000 in June 2022. And the Waikato region had an annual increase of 40.3%, from $735,000 to $840,000. And they said 4 regions showed an annual decrease in median price. Wellington was down 4.2%, from $885,000 in June 21 to $848,000 in June 22. And there was less volatility in median prices across some of the TAs in the region, consistent with market dynamics. 6 of the 8 TAs in the Wellington region had negative price movements, with 1 showing no movement and only South Waipara increasing. Hawke's Bay was down 1.4% from $700,000 to $690,000, and the median price in Wanganui decreased 1.1% from $581,200 to $575,000, and Taranaki saw a marginal decrease of 0.2% from $576,000 to $575,000 over the same period. 6 TAs achieved record medians. 3 of those were in Waikato, 2 in Canterbury, and 1 in the West Coast. Jen Baird, the chief executive of the REINZ, said the median price across New Zealand increased 4.2% annually to $850,000 in June 2022. Month on month, there was a 1.2% increase in the median price. Note that's different from the HPI. And as we move from May to June, the season adjusted figures show an increase of 1.5%, indicating performance was marginally better than expected. They don't, of course, explain how they make those seasonal adjustments. We're seeing volatility across the country as the market seeks equilibrium at a more moderate pace. While Canterbury saw its median price increase 22.1% and Waikato was up 14.3%, 4 regions dipped into negative annual price movements. Wellington was down 4.2% compared to June last year. Housing affordability remains an issue for many buyers on the market. Paired with tighter lending restrictions, higher interest rates and concerns over inflation, we are seeing hesitancy amongst buyers. As the market stabilises and the high growth we saw through 2021 dissipates, downward pressure on prices may improve affordability. However, this is balanced with higher mortgage costs and wider economic headwinds that may continue to temper people's appetite for entering the market as a buyer or a seller. Further changes to the Credit Contracts and Consumer Finance Act regulations have been implemented, which may, though, alleviate some pressures on borrowers. However, it's yet to be seen whether the recent changes go far enough to remedy the handbrake on activity they initiated when introduced in December 2021. Turning to sales, they reported that across New Zealand the number of residential property sales decreased annually by 38.1% in June 2022, from 7,629 in June 21 to 4,721. And the sales count for New Zealand excluding Auckland decreased 35% annually, from 4,776 to 3,103. And all regions saw an annual decrease in the number of sales, with only West Coast up 31% had a month-on-month increase. Those with the greatest annual percentage decreases were Auckland, which decreased 43.3%, from 2,853 to 1,618, Bay of Plenty, which decreased 41.3%, Gisborne, which decreased 39.5%, and Taranaki, which decreased 39.4%, annually from 198 to 120. She went on to say, we expect activity to decrease over the winter months as part of the usual annual property cycle. In June, residential property sales decreased annually by 38.1%, month-on-month sales decreased by 17.3%, but the seasonally adjusted figures moving from May to June shows a 5.8% decrease, so while sales activity was still below what's expected, the drop isn't as stark. And nationally, the total number of properties available for sale increased 89.5% annually, from 13,861 in June 21 to 26,271. And in New Zealand, excluding Auckland, inventories increased 107.8%, from 7,612 to 15,820. Excluding the West Coast, which was up 19.6%, all regions saw inventory levels increase annually by 40% or more, and 7 regions saw inventory more than double compared to the same period last year. Wellington and Wanganui have had over twice the inventory they recorded in the same month the year prior for 7 consecutive months, up 179.1% and 131.8% respectively in June 2022 compared to June 21. And in addition, Nelson increased 106.7%, the Bay of Plenty was up 158.9%, Waikato saw inventory rise by 130.3%, and Otago by 101.8% compared to June 21. And listings were up 1.6% across New Zealand in June, and 6.5% for New Zealand excluding Auckland. Nelson and Waikato had over 20% more listings than 1 year prior, at 41.8% and 20.7% respectively, but listings were down in Southland, down 13.1% for the 6th consecutive month, and Gisborne for the 5th consecutive month, down 6.3%. The figures indicate stock is staying on the market for longer. In June, inventory levels increased 89.5%, and the median days to sell across New Zealand is now 44 days. Meanwhile, listings were up a more marginal 1.6%. More stock on the market, though, they said, makes more choice for buyers. With stock growth in some regions in triple figures, the urgency we saw through 2021 has eased, and buyers feel they have more time to find the right property, undertake their due diligence, and make an informed life decision. However, there are multiple factors in play, including a lengthier sales process as we continue to see sales conditional upon finance or sale of a home, and further access to finance and concerns around inflation and rising interest rates cause hesitancy among would-be buyers and sellers. And so the days to sell blew out. Across New Zealand, the median number of days to sell, the DTS, is 44, up 13 compared to June 2021. For New Zealand, excluding Auckland, it increased 15 days to 45. Two regions did see annual decreases in the median DTS. West Coast was down 5 days to 28 and Gisborne was down 3 days to 38. That's the region's lowest days to sell since January 2022. At 66, Hawke's Bay had the highest median DTS of all regions and the highest in the region since January 2009. Otago's median DTS in June was 52, the region's highest since May 2013, and Wanganui had 54. That's the highest median since July 2015. And across New Zealand, 565 properties sold by auction in June. That was 12% of overall sales, compared to 26.3% in June 2021. In May, 10.9% of properties were sold at auction. For New Zealand, excluding Auckland, 9.1% or 282 properties were sold by auction in June, compared to 17.5% in June 21. And the Canterbury region had the highest percentage of sales by auction at 23.4%, just 171, down from 28% in June last year. Gisborne saw 19.2% of properties sell at auction, compared to 32.6% in June 21 for a June month. That was the lowest in Gisborne since June 2015. And in Auckland, the percentage of sales by auction was 17.5% compared to 41% last year. And in the Bay of Plenty, 7.8% of properties sold at auction, 21 in June 2022, compared to 36% in June last year. And that was the lowest percentage of sales by auction in the region since January 2013. And in Northland, 9.9% of properties sold at auction, that was just 13 actually, compared to 27% the June prior, the region's lowest since January 2021. Auctions attract serious buyers, and while you need to be able to buy unconditionally to be successful under the hammer, serious buyers who can only buy conditionally are now being successful in the days post-auction, they said. Over 2021, the market was highly competitive and auctions increasingly became the preferred method of sale, underpinned by a high clearance rate. As the market has slowed and the pools of buyers able to buy unconditionally has decreased, with more contracts subject to finance or other conditions, home buyers are considering alternatives, Baird said. Now, if you stand back and look at this more objectively, three issues come out. Firstly, home prices are falling and the rate of fall is increasing. And of course, the recent Reserve Bank of New Zealand interest rate rise will just flow through into slower momentum ahead. Secondly, the number of listings continues to rise. And as listings rise, of course, that tends to lead to more price falls. And thirdly, it's worth thinking about this. We know that as interest rates rise, we will see some people being forced to sell. So one of the other factors to think about is how many of those listings are now forced listings. There isn't much information about that yet, but it's something that's worth investigating. So the bottom line is this. The New Zealand property market is in for a considerably deeper fall than where we are at the moment. But if you believe the stuff from the REINZ, they cherry pick only the good news in my view. A more objective view would, I think, be more helpful. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.